Hello, folks. Welcome, welcome, welcome back to TwitchLine. Yes, we're on a special night, Sunday night here, June the 2nd. Your boy here had a little bit of business that had to be done during the week, so we were not available at our normal time on Wednesday at 10:30. But we're coming to you live here on Sunday evening. So welcome everyone to the channel. I am Hotohori Z, and joined as always is my cohort in and partner in crime, Mr. Acorn, Mr. Tim. How are you today?
Doing well, doing well. I just went out and had a wonderful Thai dinner with my wife and my good friend Hoto.
Yay!
So, yeah, we just finished our meal and then we got back here and we're going to get this thing started.
All
Looking forward to
right. Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to get things started here, but of course, a little bit of business early on here to start off with. Remember, you can contact us via Gmail. It is twitchlinelove@gmail.com, or you can tweet us here at Twitchline on Twitter if you want to contact us, ask us a question, or do whatever you want there. So please, also, all that stuff is available at the bottom of the screen there. If you take a look, you can email us, and also remember to visit our YouTube channel. Click on below. We probably shouldn't even give you the link here because you'll probably want to make sure now that you are going to be clicking on the link below where you can see past episodes of Twitchline on YouTube. So you'll be able to see anything that we show here on YouTube, on Twitch, here on YouTube. We try to upload those videos one day after we go live here on Twitch. So let us take us to the main screen, and there I am. Hello, everyone. How you doing today, Tim? Ooh, looks like we're up for a busy day. There's been stuff that people have been emailing us about, and we got our first submission today. It was
it.
absolutely
Woo!
fantastic. Woohoo! People are caring. This is great. But let us lead into the issue at hand here, and it is an interesting topic that we start off with because this is something that I think not very many people have this problem. So I think it is going to be very interesting for us to talk about.
All right. So, yes, our first email submitted question. It actually turned out to be quite a long one, so I'm going to do more of a uh, synopsis. I'm just going to give you a little summary of what happened. Um, a gentleman was writing it to us about how he hated his girlfriend's job in the sex industry. Now, it seems that he got together with a lady who was involved in the sex industry. And early on, he thought that it would be kind of a fling, or he wasn't really sure about where he was going to go. And he had conflicts about whether or not he was comfortable with dating with someone, being with someone in the sex industry. But he sort of overlooked it because he was, just in it for fun, he thought. But turns out she was an incredible girl. He fell in love with her. They, over I think 6 months is what he said. They
Mhm.
became very close, and now he can't think of his life without her. The problem is, all that while, as he was falling deeper, the issues he had with her as a sex industry worker started creating that conflict for him. He wasn't exactly comfortable with it, and he, but he respected her, and he knew that he wasn't going to come in there and blow up her world and tell her to change. But he also couldn't bear being with her and having her getting attention from these other guys and sort of, I guess, giving her attention to them as well. He was never actually specific about what she did in the sex industry, so that's going to be up to our imaginations, and we'll talk about some of that stuff going forward. But advice, of course, would really depend on which part of the industry she was in. Um, so please, guys, in the future, if you are more specific about these details, we can actually give you better advice. Uh, so yeah, so this guy's he's he's in a trouble spot.
Mhm.
He's it's a tough spot to be in. Um, so Z, did you want to go first and give some just off the top of your head stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like this is it's an interesting topic, and it's a problem that I think not a lot of people would actually suffer from. But the sex industry is wide ranging, so that's the thing. Is like what exactly is sex work. So sex work will be a lot of things. It's not just movies and working in LA and working on set with professional porn stars. Sex work is also escort services. Sex work includes webcam shows, and sex work to a point is just basically anything that you can do live streaming, possibly where you earn donations, where you are basically engaging in your fellow viewers in something that can be deemed sexual in nature. So, I mean, Twitch has a
The
tendency
sex
to.
work that we're doing.
Yeah. So, like possibly we're talking about relationships, and this is something associated in the sexual realm. But I mean, when we're talking on Twitch, I mean, I think the term that everybody says is the Twitch thoughts. The girls who are in the IRL channel that are not necessarily playing video games or could be playing video games, but are dressed in very scandalous ways, showing a lot of cleavage, not showing any nudity or anything like that. But the whole idea is to tantalize their viewers, give them a rise, let's say, and then just sort of entertain them in that way. So they're using their body and the imagery that they're providing in a manner to sort of stimulate their viewer, which theoretically can be deemed sex work in that sort of way. I mean, like Tim, what do you? Um, are there any other examples, and am I missing? I mean, is there? I think that I'm
No, I
forgetting
mean, I
anything.
think you hit it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, besides the most obvious, which would just be outright prostitution. I
Yes.
mean, there's escorts, but then, sex work is everything from the traditional street, you know, lady on the street to what these days, I mean, you can design your own excitement. You can order some really strange things and people will show up and give it to you. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that he's talking about a girlfriend that does cam work. Um, she's probably, I don't know, stripping on camera or something. And he is not comfortable with that being her way of making money and for that way of like it requires a kind of connection between her and someone besides him. So I think that's where he got thrown off. uh, so I mean, my initial take on this is like, you can't ignore your red flags at the start, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone's red flags might not be the same as someone else's. But if you're going into it, even if you're trying to be casual, even if you're thinking it's like a one night thing, you still have to have certain, uh, I don't know if it's a standard, but you have to know what you're comfortable with. And if one date turns into two, turns into three, turns into 10, then you need to check back with yourself and say, hey, this is actually possibly going somewhere. Is there anything happening here that I know won't work for me later? And is that something that I can request of someone else? Like, is it right for me to ask someone else to change themselves or their life, their direction, so that I'm comfortable? What do you
Yeah,
think?
and I think this was, I think, a lot of lack of preparation, because you're right. Like, going into the industry, going into the relationship, knowing that the other person is in the sex industry, is problematic if you didn't think you were going to be with this person for an extended period of time. Now, as you said, multiple dates. That is exactly when uh, the prospect of it becoming real should have basically incurred a conversation where it says, I'm really starting to like you, and I'm really having issues with your job. And before it manifested into a full blown relationship, and now he is crazy about this girl, he didn't have that conversation with himself or even with her, just to discuss as, like, is this something that you're going to be doing for a long period of time? I really, really like you, but I really have serious issues with what you're doing, especially now that I am really considering turning you into my longtime girlfriend and my serious partner. I really don't have issues, and he wasn't honest with himself. It's just sort of manifested himself, and now he's in a really bad spot because he is neck deep in relationship with this person, and he really hates her job. And I think I don't know if it's too late to have that conversation, but I think if it's really gnawing at him, he still has to have it and has to understand the consequences that'll come from it, because this is not the worker, like a cam girl worker or something like that, is what you're guessing. They make serious money. This is not like
Yep.
this is not some money that is like, oh, I'm just doing it on the side just so I can get by. A lot of the professionals who have subscribers and people who have subscriptions, and people who do this on a regular basis, they have followers, they have viewers, they have people who donate on a regular basis, and they donate a lot of money. I mean, I don't have, I should have brought up the statistics on what it was to be like the average make of somebody in that sort of type of industry, but it is not a small amount of money. So you would be, if you were going to have this conversation with her, basically sort of asking her, like, would you be able to stop? And that answer might not be yes immediately, which would then put the onus back on him to say, do I want to continue, or do I want to let this keep gnawing at me? Because it's not one of those things in which it's her profession at this point. She's not going to be able to sort of just drop it out of hat.
True.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I don't know what the life time or the timeline is for someone in this industry, how many years they can spend in the sex industry making that top dollar. I mean, he could play the long game. Perhaps he could wait a while and see if she draws back at some point. But I mean, as you said, this is her primary source of income, and he got into it knowing that that's what she did. So, honestly, I think it would be quite wrong of him to ask her to stop doing what she's doing so that he can feel comfortable.
Hmm.
Especially since, this is 6 months into their relationship, and all this time, she's been doing her thing, and he's, you know, supposedly been okay with it. So, I mean, I gotta give him credit, right? In his email to us, he said that he does recognize that he's the one with the problem and that he doesn't want to dump it on her. So, he's actually seeking a healthy solution. He's not trying to just, like I said, blow up her world and, like, make her quit her job. Uh, and at the same time, uh I think he recognized that maybe he has to be the one that sacrifices here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
and I think it has to be him, because this is mostly his issue, right? Like, he was the one that's having the problem with it. So it's not going to be simple, whatever it is. Like, he has to be honest with himself. He's realized he has a problem, and now he needs to find a solution, and we're trying to give him one. A solution of basically saying, look, like, if you're honest with yourself, then you have to be honest with your partner, and that honesty could maybe turn into something, but it's not necessarily going to be that way. Like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You're asking her to give up something that would probably be almost hard and impossible to give up. So therefore, the solution has to be either fixing how you feel about it, or not being in a relationship with him more, because, or living with it. I guess that's the third option. But if living with it is just going to gnaw at you and make you resent her and do all sorts of stuff, that's not healthy either. So those are probably the things that you would have to do. I'm a big sort of proprietor of basically being honest with yourself and honest with your partner. Put it out there on the table. But that's just me. Like, and say, and basically have the honest conversation with her and say, hey, look, we've been dating for a long time now. It's gotten really serious. I really, really like you. I think this can go somewhere, but I really, at this point, have an issue with what you do. And I'm trying to be as honest with you as possible. I understand it is a me problem. And I know going into this relationship that this is what you did. And you're going to have to listen to her out and say, hey, look, you express yourself to her, completely honest, but then you have to be able to live with the consequences that come up of it. And I think it's not going to be very easy. And you're probably not going to like maybe something that she's going to hear, or you could be surprised, or you could say, hey, look, I really like you too. I've been doing this for money for a while. Maybe I'll quit because I really, really do like you too. You don't know until you actually have that conversation, honestly.
yeah, very true, man. I think you hit it on the head. I think that Yeah, if he indicates, shows how much he loves her, and shows that he cares about her deeply, and that this is something that is significant for him, that they can find a way forward, and you know, hopefully they do. Um, but I think as a side here, some of the underlying issues that I think might be important for anyone. I mean, this is not only advice for someone who's dealing with this exact thing that's in the sex industry. None of that stuff. Like we need to consider, how do we define our own boundaries,
Mhm.
and how do we define the boundaries within a relationship, right? What might be fine for you while you're single won't work when you're connecting with someone else, right? You have to accept everything that comes with them and their world, and this can be race, culture, religion, so many areas where these kind of things can arise. So part of that process, I think, is about setting yourself on a path from the beginning of the relationship and having the foresight to say, like, this is what I'm bringing, this is what they're bringing, and this is what we may see down the road. So uh, knowing yourself well enough to say that, this is a no go for me, and this I can't accept. Some of it's just about the experience of being with the person. You learn what works for you, what doesn't. But if something really strongly affects you in the beginning and you're saying, I don't know if I can handle this, it's probably an indication that things are not going to go the way you want them to.
Yeah, yeah, but but the final thing is just like, to me, it was more, you knew what you were going to get yourself into, and you've fallen into it, and it is a matter of trying to get yourself out of it. And you created this problem by knowing what she did, and kept going with it without necessarily uh, feeling like, oh, I'm dating somebody in the sex industry, ha ha ha, and then all of a sudden it happens, that it turns into something real, and you sort of have to own up to it. So, good luck with that. Hopefully, you do have an honest conversation, at least in my opinion. And then if it doesn't go well, I'm sorry. But, going forward, Tim had some great advice. You do have to set boundaries for yourself. You have to know where you're going to be end up going. Like, you sort of want to map out what you want to do, and you want to be careful. Like, you have to know what you're getting into at all times. And there are certain situations in which it sounds interesting and sounds fun once in a while, but when you have to relive with the reality of the situation, and you yourself can't handle it, that is a problem. So, just be careful, going forward. But hopefully, good things happen going forward, and we're sort of wishing for the best for your relationship.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, these kind of things they're stressful. I mean, you care about someone and they have something, something on their menu that just conflicts with you. Y- this one is kind of extreme because I don't think most people ever date someone, love someone in the sex industry.
Yeah.
But uh, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something more simple. Maybe, here we're on Twitch, right? Maybe your girlfriend is a streamer. She streams games and stuff, and she finds that she gets a lot more viewers when she, looks extra cute or something. That alone for some people might be too much.
Hmm.
So knowing yourself and being honest with yourself is going to be really important.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we'll
So
see.
good.
So shall we move on?
Yes.
Next subject. Great.
Yeah. So next topic here. So this next one is a Reddit topic that we discovered. It is for people who decide to give the silent treatment. So let us take you to the screen and let us read the topic here. This one is submitted by Mr. Single in Crime. So Single in Crime starts the post with a whole bunch of question marks. Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. And I think it starts off with a little bit of a rant, but here we go. Single in Crime writes, I have no idea what you're trying to accomplish. If you need space to think about the situation, that's completely fine. But if you're not talking for the pure reason of you think the other person's going to come back round because they realize how mad you are and realize that they can't live without you, then you're just being a jerk. You aren't solving anything, you are just selfish. If you are really that upset about a situation, then leave a letter asking for space. Pretending that they don't exist is just plain dumb. Edit. Oh wow, a lot of people seem to relate. I've been reading all the comments because I was actually curious on what people had to say. So I learned something new today. Apparently, it's called stonewalling when you're doing it intentionally for manipulation, which is mostly what I was referring to. To the peeps that do it to calm down. I totally get that. Since you're caught up in the heat of the moment, you can't. Yeah, moment you can't. You can't. You just friggin' can't talk or yell or tell. All I advise is that is someone you care about, you or you want to fix the situation with, let them know you need space. The letter thing is something I do when I'm emotionally distraught and I can't look a person in the face. I write it down on a piece of paper, something like, give me a minute. I'll kick your butt when I have my thoughts straight on how am I going to do it. I just thought it might be good advice to give y'all. To the people who stonewall to be petty, dot dot dot, boy. I guess one thing people should remember is that if they are getting the silent treatment, figure out if it's to win the argument or because they need to calm down. That's actually a very good point. If it's the latter, try to bring it up when you can, so it's not forgotten. It's not a forgotten pin on the wall. To the people giving, if you aren't trying to hurt them, please get back to them, or at least communicate something if it's worth saving. I feel like if you tell them something, it's always better than nothing. Even ghosting, totally different subject, but on track. Like if you're going to at least tell the person that. If they were a jerk, tell them that they are a jerk and go. To those who are curious about my situation, I'm all good. My significant other is currently having family problems, and their mom is giving them an intense silent treatment because they are upset and they want to leave. I was thinking about it and how my mother did that to me and how my father and I are currently doing it. I think it's uncool. Communication is key for good relationships. Silent and secrets are for attacks and escapes. There is so much to break down in this. The breakdown is that he thinks that giving the silent treatment to somebody is a terrible way of fighting, and I can completely sort of understand that. And he's trying to sort of express his emotions with regards to being given the silent treatment. But it's one of those things that a lot of the times you see it, and I don't want to overgeneralize that the silent treatment happens when a male member of the relationship has definitely done something wrong, and the female member just refuses to engage as to either apologize to him.
Wait,
It is
are you
overgeneral.
saying this is a yeah, you're generalizing here.
I'm
Come on, man.
overgeneralizing this, and I completely understand because guys do the same thing, especially to women. But in my experience, I have been given the silent treatment more than I have given the silent treatment to women that I have dated. But Tim, let's break this down. I mean, the silent treatment. What is your view on the whole thing?
All right. Yeah, I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, before I get into it, uh, this guy, he's not the best writer,
No.
but I get what he's trying to say. It seems like he started off as more of like a rant rather than a
Mm-hmm.
request for advice. So, we'll sort of pass over that a little bit. But it seems like the main theme here is like, do you calm down and cool off, or you know, are you using this as a tool to take power away from someone in a fight? And I think that's probably the main purpose of using the silent treatment. Now, I know going cold, it's another way of saying it, it's a pretty common technique. Uh, People, instead of looking for a solution to the actual problem, uh, they end up just trying to get that love and affection back. They can't actually solve the problem in hand because they are feeling that they're losing this person, or that uh, getting positive affection is more important to them than actually getting to the meat of the issue. And oftentimes, you end up losing even if you win. If you win and you get that person's attention back, you haven't necessarily fixed anything that got you to that place in the first place. And some people are very aware of this. Some people do it subconsciously because they're not uh, emotionally mature enough to work through a problem through communication. Some people just they know if I go cold now and I go silent, I can count, and they'll be coming after me. Just watch it happen. They even
Mm-hmm.
send texts to their friends. I'm doing it again. Watch, see what happens. He's gonna be thirsty in a minute. you know. And I would hope that most people are not manipulating other people to get what they want or to win, but I'm sure it's happening. So, like, we ask ourselves, like, is it the point in an argument to be right or to solve the problem? Right? Are we arguing on principles and theories, and then and to what end? So, what do you think about this?
The thing about it is motivations with regards to fighting is always different. And the arguments that I would have in a relationship never never resorted to like who was right or who was wrong. It would be arguments about how things should be done. Logic arguments, stuff like that. That's the type of fighting that I think is completely fine. Like if you believe that something should be done one way and your partner believes that something can be done another way and you get into an argument about it, that's legitimate. You have two different ways of doing something that you want to get done and you fight over it. That's great. I think the bigger issue here is fighting technique. I think I've experienced multiple relationships of other people and I've seen them fight. And some people really go for the gut. They really are just trying to just give them like a sucker punch to just
Savage.
completely and savage ways of doing it. Other people are very more subtle about it. They will not fight in public, for example, just so that they don't want to engage their friends in any sort of issues. I've done couples counseling in the sense that I've had two people who didn't understand how to communicate with each other and would break out into these fights where one person would come to me and the other person would come to me, and I ended up being in the middle because they refused to talk to each other over like what issues they were having, and it ended
So
up
they were
to
both giving each other the silent treatment.
that's exactly right.
Wow.
Because they didn't want the other to make it seem like they were weak, or they just would anything they felt like that came out of their mouth would just upset the other person more. So they felt like if they needed an intermediary to sort of to basically interpret for them, to a point where I literally sat them down and was like, "Look, you two are being idiots. It's like the way that you're fighting is super super dumb because I'm in the middle of it. I know everything, and the fact is that you're fighting over stupid shit, and it comes to break down with regards to that." And that's the real reason. It's like if one, and I'm going to give various examples here, so be patient with it. So if it if you are getting the silent treatment because you cheated on your significant other, then you messed up. And that silent treatment is that's the least of the things that you probably should be getting. Then you have to sort of understand and sort of have to deal with that situation. Coming in a situation like that, then it's absolutely deserved where you have to wait on the other person. You were the one who messed up and you have to take the punishment. But if you're getting the silent treatment for something somewhat petty, and the thing about it is like petty is different to different people. Like if you're getting the silent treatment because you started to have a fight over what you wanted to have for dinner, then the motivation there is only to win. It's like it's not a real fight. It's just sort of like I want to have chicken, she wants to have beef. I figured it's like, hey, chicken's going to be really really good tonight, and it's like we always have chicken. Why do you always want to have chicken? Stop it. And then like but it's really good, and then she just refuses to talk to you. That is just yeah, is stupid. It's just like what? There's some fights sometimes in that particular situation. It's not worth fighting at all. It's like, hey, lose the fight here and forget about it. But what happens is like what people believe is that there's a power dynamic you're then giving up, because if you start to give up on things and you feel like it's like, oh, I let him have his way here and I let him have it this way here, he's just running over me, so therefore I have to fight back, and that isn't good either. It's just one of those things in which like sometimes like you don't want to be manipulative in any way, and the poster was absolutely right, because you do need to talk to your partner and what is going on, but you cannot fight in a way, I think, that is uncomfortable to either partner. You have to be able to say in a relationship, I don't like what you're doing right now. This is stupid. We should have if we're going to have an argument, we should sit down and be logical about this. But there are emotions involved, and there's just something that you can't do. If you feel like you are so mad and you cannot like sort of express your emotions the right way, I understand his suggestion of maybe writing it down, or maybe even just saying to your partner, "Look, I'm very, very angry right now. I cannot and will not engage with you in anything until I am able to calm down," which was also another thing that he was also bringing up in his discussion. But I think it's different with everyone. People fight differently, and you have to find a solution for that. That's just me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's all true. I mean, uh, dynamic is really important there. You know, each side of the equation is important, but uh, I think when someone decides that their silence is going to be a weapon, then uh, then there's a loss. So if you are exerting control by manipulating someone's emotions and you're saying to yourself, I'm going to get what I want by taking this nuclear option, I'm going to make the other person have to decide whether I get to win the fight or whether we are in communication at all. Like a lot of times there's no argument there. Like the person's just going to try to make things better. And, this is used too often, I think. But it sort of brings me to sort of the next place in this conversation, which is like, how do you play fair in a fight? I mean, like, no one really teaches you necessarily how to be emotionally responsible, and how to fight fair
Hmm.
when it comes to high emotions in a relationship. So, like, I think there are a few questions you have to ask yourself um, to know, not just about yourself, but also the person that you're going to be fighting with. Like, is this person I'm with just like a firecracker? Do they need a little space just to like burn out and cool down? And if they're that person, the worst thing you can do is force them to stay in the fight and like not give them that space because they're going to end up blown up on you. So like some people do need that time and that space, and you give it to them, and they'll come back, and then that's when you can have your smooth and easy conversation. Uh, Other people like they just want to get it done there and then,
Hmm.
and then maybe it's not a problem. It just depends. If you're both one way or the other, it works okay. But if you've got one person that really wants it to happen now and the other person that really needs that space, that's going to be problematic, right? Then the second question you ask yourself is my partner interested in the same result as me, right? If my intention is I want to get to a solution where we can have happiness and love and have this not come up again, and they're interested in just winning the fight or like playing games,
Hmm.
it's going to be a big problem. The if both people are not interested in solving the problem, it's going to come up again. It always does. And then the last one is just like, what are the consequences? Like, what is at stake if it's not resolved? Uh, if if someone regularly uses the silent treatment on you, but they always come back and they're warm later, and it's just like their little thing, then you can kind of discount it a little bit. It doesn't have to be this massive, oh my god, the relationship's going to end kind of feeling. Um, but if they're holding the relationship over you, dangling it like a carrot, and saying, I either win this or you'll get silence forever because we're going to break up, then that's a whole nother next level of manipulation. And again, that's a big sign that things are not going well in the relationship. That maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is like you see, and this is a personal aside from me, is like when you see old people, and when I mean old people, I mean married couples who've been at it for 20 years or so, just complain about everything. It's because they know like each other intimately to the point where everything is almost an argument sometimes, and nothing is an argument sometimes. It's just they're just communicating it. My parents specifically uh, never really got into fights, like verbal disagreements about stuff. But when they did, you could tell that it was very, very important. But they would just yell at each other for everything, like, did you change the toilet paper? I didn't change it today because we didn't need it. It's still there. It's like, did you go buy more? It's like, we don't need any more. We got 3 rolls. It's arguments happen in all relationships. Arguments happen. You have to be really, you sort of have to understand like what is going to be won, what is going to be lost when you have an argument over something. Is it petty? Is it not petty? And it really just takes experience to understand what goes on with regards to what it is you're quote fighting about. And the thing about it is like, oops, that's our notes right there. Sorry. Um, what it is going to be important about is just relationships take time, relationships take experience. So if you are new to a relationship, a lot of the times fights can be the be all end all of a relationship. So if you've never been in a relationship and you're fighting with your partner, it can be very distressing. You've never fought with your partner before, you don't know what's going on. But you have to understand like what it is you're fighting about. You sort of have to get over it, come up with an amicable situation solution, which a lot of the times either uh, you both win, none of you win, or both of you are unhappy with the situation, but you sort of have to go forward. And sometimes that's how it all ends. And it's like, and you have to, I used to believe that, it would be okay to fight about little petty things. And I've actually come around and thinking it's like the little things there's no reason to fight over them. Like if you want to fight over which restaurant you want to go to that evening, it's not worth it. To me, I feel like it's like food is food. If you make your partner happy by going to the restaurants that he or she likes all the time, um, that's great. But you always want to speak up a couple times. It's like, oh, I'm really in the mood for this. I'd really, really like to go here. We went to this place last time when we try to decide where we go. Can we go to this one? And usually that'll be, if you have a loving partner, that's amicably solved, relatively easy. But when you get into some of the serious stuff, like like I don't know why you're out tomorrow night. I would really like you to be with me. You would then have to have these conversations that are really, really in depth, and you have to be very logical about how you're trying to express yourself to the other person. Because when you do end up getting into a fight about activities or things that your significant other is doing that you really dislike, you have to be able to communicate that in a way that isn't threatening. And sometimes emotions get heated and things happen. So I mean, this whole topic I think was more or less about, in my opinion, um, just trying to sort of understand where your partner is coming from and sort of understanding why your significant other is doing things he or she is doing in that particular way. And then for you to sort of help and understand the situation a little better and say, hey, look, if that person is giving me the silent treatment because she can't understand or he can't understand how to express himself, then great. But if it's a power dynamic thing, if there are red flags about things that you should be worried about, then it could be one of those things in which you don't need to put up with this anymore, and you sort of have to go forward in your own way and sort of do your own thing. So I think I've
Yeah, our
yeah.
poster here also seems to indicate that this is a dynamic that's alive in the relationships around him,
Hmm.
which means that you have to be extra careful because a lot of times subconsciously you're going to mimic behavior, especially that of your parents. So if your parents are doing this kind of interaction, this kind of fighting, these emotional manipulations, there's a decent chance that it's going to show up in your relationships, whether you mean to or not. So be aware. Don't go down that road. You don't need to use silence as a weapon. Be open. Let people know, and things will move along more smoothly.
But learned behavior is learned behavior, right? I mean, like you saw how your parents fought, and you saw that your mom would win a lot more fights if your mom didn't say anything and just ignored your dad the entire time until your dad came
But was
back.
that winning? I don't know if that was winning.
That's the
I know
thing,
that
right?
it didn't escalate, but was that winning?
I don't know, but as a kid, if you watch that, did you understand that it wasn't winning or it wasn't losing? It was just somebody just gaining the silent treatment to gain an advantage. I think when you're younger, you see something like that, it sort of influences your behavior into how you go about doing it, and it isn't necessarily the greatest way of going about it when you then apply it to your own personal relationship, but they learned that's how he or she learned how to fight, because that was the example that was given to them when they were growing up. And maybe it's like then you hit this like, oh my god, uh, my mom always won, or my mom used it and it ended up working out in her favor all the time. It's not working for me. I don't get it. What's going on?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think part of that is, you know, a, you're a child, and your concept of what's actually going on between your parents is only limited to how it affects you
Hmm.
and your understanding of the world at that time. So, like, if you're a little kid, you're not really going to get anything beyond the yelling
Hmm.
and storming out and stuff like that. If you're middle school or high school, you might have some idea a little bit deeper, but you don't know what led to that fight. You can't possibly understand the pressures of adulthood and all the other stuff, having kids. So, like, as you go through the phases of your own life, you'll understand more and more how they got to it. But the problem is this stuff hits you and goes into your brain and deep into your subconscious before you've made those cognitive leaps in your development. So it will end up showing up and possibly negatively affecting you, especially if you're using it and using it in the wrong way. So most people should probably do a little self-reflection and try to see if you saw something positive about the way your best friend, your parents, everyone else around you, how they argue, and then if you see the kind of like the dark side of that, and hopefully pick the good habits.
Yeah. Pick the good habits, and you know what? When all else fails, um, talking in a calm, respectful manner, nobody's ever been angry about that. They get a lot of the times you'll be able to get more stuff done. You just sit down, try to keep your emotions in check, and discuss it logically, and have a honest conversation with it. That's where maturity comes in. That's what experience sort of comes in. But a lot of times you do have to suffer the slings and arrows of going through things that you've never gone through before and learning how to handle those situations. So yeah,
All right.
on to the next topic.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, our next topic here was sent in by C Grimner 9,
Mm-hmm.
and the topic is anyone single because their standards are too high. All right, here we go. This will be something. Um, okay, it's a short and sweet one. So, hi. Is anyone else single mostly because they have standards that are too high? You either never meet that close to ideal person, or when you do, the attraction isn't mutual and you get rejected. You're not willing to settle, so you never meet someone you're willing to have a long term relationship with. Are my or your standards too high? Should we look for must have versus nice to have qualities in a potential mate? Is not settling worth it with the chance of being indefinitely single? And at what point do you draw the line or settle? Well, then, these are
Hmm.
big questions. And there's a lot to this, even though it was kind of short. Um, so yeah, let's see. How do we set our standards for those people that we want to date? Uh, what what's acceptable for me might not be acceptable for you. Z. What's acceptable for both of us might not be acceptable for the next guy. So this is about getting honest with yourself and saying, this is what I need from someone else. This is what I expect from someone else, and this is what I'm not really willing to compromise on. And the real bugger is, no matter what standards we set, that other person, whether they made them or not, they still have to want us. So that's the that's the trouble, right? You can set your standards high or low or whatever, but if the other person isn't looking at you and thinking, this person meets my own standards, then what's it going to be worth?
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Like this is the crux of the problem of online dating. It's you're a situation where, for example, in online dating, you basically list what it is that you want out of a partner, and you're trying to match up like the positives and the negatives, and figuring out like, and I'm taking Tinder out of it. So let's say you're on a one of those classic sort of dating sites. You list what you want: height ranges, body weight, ethnicity, like religion,
Salary.
salary, job, where they live, location of their domicile. Are they within a driving distance, or do you have to drive really far away? I mean, like online dating has cut to the crux of all of that, and that's the thing that I think makes it hard for people now is that when you meet somebody in person for the first time and you actually go out, a lot of those standards or that you quote set for yourself, you don't actually learn until later. Like you meet an attractive guy or girl at a party that your friend is throwing. You really like the personality real quick. He's really cute or she's really cute. You decide to go out, and then when you go out, you meet, you talk about, oh, I am from, and this is just an example for everybody online, we're from the DC area. So I live in Arlington, Virginia. Oh, you know what? I met John through work, but I live in Bethesda. Now, for anybody who lives in the DC area knows that those two cities are in different states. Subject one lives in Virginia, the other subject lives in Maryland. Traveling is a big issue in the DC area. So you meet somebody who you really like, who you find attractive, who you think, oh man, I could really go with this girl and have a good time. Oh, she lives 35 plus minutes away, and if it's traffic, it could be an hour plus away. Eh, is that something I want to deal with? It's like, do you find that out later? That usually is one of those things in which a person is usually more willing to sacrifice because they've gotten all of the things. Online dating, for example, you set those specifics up, they match you up, you meet somebody at a coffee shop, Starbucks or a restaurant or something, and the attractiveness isn't there, or they lied on their profile, or the standards are they meet all the criteria, but personalities don't match, and it's immediately like done. And
Yeah, I
you
drove
just
40 minutes for this.
this
What the hell?
exactly the sort of disappointment associated with that is so much higher. You know what I mean? It's like you meet somebody in person and you find out something disappointing afterwards. You're able to be like, oh, she's really nice and she's really good looking, but man, I gotta drive 2 hours away. Or man, she's a Republican or a Democrat or like a libertarian. It's like I don't know if I can actually deal with the political thing, and I just really want to just have a good time. But it seems like politics is her life, and we didn't talk about that at the party. But it's almost as if like the disappointment is a little bit subdued in that particular way, and I think it really does come down to dating type. Like I haven't done significant amounts of online dating, so I haven't gone through the grinder of that. But when I did, and like some things didn't work out, it was just one of those things in which it's like, okay, on to the next person. But you go through it over and over and over again. It can be somewhat disheartening. So
Yeah, and you gotta wonder also, is this happening in the opposite direction, right? The standards that you have, uh, what you're willing to accept or not. Like, are there people out there that are like, man, I don't know if I really feel this, but she only lives like 5 minutes away. It's really convenient, I might as
yeah,
well. you know,
yeah,
it's like, or oh, normally I would date someone over 6 feet tall, but you know, he has a season pass, for my favorite sports team, so it's okay. Let's do this thing.
exactly. And like and the thing about it is I think really when it comes to setting standards, I think everybody has an idea of what their ideal mate would be, in their mind. Um, but the way you go about finding that person, be it uh, online or in person, I think the situation then dictates how you deal with that particular person. Like, and is just one of those things in which the question of whether or not you settle uh, is a very very hard question, because sometimes it's not necessarily settling. It's like you like everything about this person, but there's like one thing that you don't like. Perfection is something that not very many people will fall into. Like, there's always going to be something that is not going to be your quote ideal. And to be in a relationship means that you must live with the ideal and the non-ideal, and to love the person when there are things that you just might not necessarily agree with. And it can be something, and it really is up to how much of it you are willing to take. Like we had in the original, in the first topic that we had, our submitter, our email submitter, didn't like the job his significant other was going to, though he knew exactly what that job was. And it was a situation where they met in person, and he was willing to go into it. Like, in this particular case, if your standards are set and you are going via online dating, there is no risk to meeting a person and then jettisoning them right away, because you really don't. They really immediately, when you started talking and meeting, didn't fall into that criteria of what you wanted. Whereas if you were to meet this person organically, and you had a good time, and you set up a date and then find out something that doesn't meet your standards, you're a little more reluctant to sort of give that up. And I think it is just different in every situation in this particular case.
It's true, definitely. And you know, uh, another process that's going on through this whole thing is like the difference between what we feel like we're entitled to as we all have a kind of a self-assessment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have I earn this much money. I'm this, a good looking. I am this good of a listener. Like whatever people value in themselves, right? So what comes with that is they all people think they deserve their equal or better, and most people are looking for something better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and if you have a good sense of yourself and you can actually value yourself, you're more likely to choose people that are in your range or whatever. But there are some people out there that are just like they're just missing it, man. They think they're the best thing that's ever happened to the world, and they are not. And they're problematic, and they bring on all kinds of drama. And so then there's sort of like that conflict between what am I entitled to and what do I actually deserve? Or do I actually deserve it at all? So there's a great value in being able to assess your own worth in the dating game and to say, I am I can see my strengths and weaknesses, and so then I can choose a partner that would kind of be at that level, right? You, if you say I'm kind of like a mediocre person, but I deserve the hottest, most amazing, intelligent person on on the planet Earth, you're just like off. There's something off about that. So it's about understanding yourself enough to make a connection that's actually going to work.
Well, let's go do this. This is a little off the cuff, but let us talk about how people value themselves, and how you should be targeting. For example, let's do me as a demo. I make
Okay.
I do I have a job outside of this. For example, my job, I make six figures doing what I do. That is a very positive job, positive aspect. But I am 5'7.5". I am not a tall person, and I do not believe I should be dating people who are much more taller than me. So if I were to believe that I deserve a 6 foot blonde, I am reaching a little bit. I would want
Maybe.
to, yeah, maybe, but
But
it.
again, so this comes down to that balance, right?
Mhm,
Uh, what you feel you're entitled to versus what you deserve, right?
exactly.
So you might feel you're entitled to someone who's maybe not quite as tall, or I don't know what the blonde thing came in. Maybe that's just your thing.
There's,
Uh, but
I'm just
and then what you actually deserve, right? So
exactly.
you think that because of your height of 5'7", you deserve someone who's shorter than 6 feet. Now, let's say this 6 foot blonde is out there and she's saying, "Okay, I'm a 6 foot tall blonde, but I don't, I make no money, and therefore, like I'm
I'm looking
lower
for something
value in
different.
her own mind, right? Her own,
Hmm.
so her sense of what she's entitled to might be lower in that case. We're, this conversation is totally ignoring like societal values that are placed on us, right? Like you need to earn this much money, you need to be this tall to be valuable. That aside, there is that interplay. There's always going to be two sides, right? So
Exactly.
that's the curiosity, and that's the part that's um, sort of unspoken, but
Yeah.
it has to be, you have to be figured out just through the trial and error of the dating game. And online dating, it's brutal, man.
Oh, it is brutal. And I mean, like if I was filling out like a form, it'd be like, you put in your height, your weight, and what I would like. Everybody puts down as like everything that they would want to see in a partner, like ethnicity, the type of ethnicity that you are. I am Asian. At my ethnicity, normally, uh, Asians would want to date other Asians, but they can be very specific as the type of Asian they want to deliver, or they don't care. And we live in America where it is a melting pot. So, but there's the other
Yeah,
thing. It's
that's
like
weird.
you can sort of cut yourself off from a dating pool, for example, because your standard is that being Indonesian, for example, I only want to date Indonesian people. Well, you know what? If there aren't that many in your area, you're not going to have that much choice. So, like,
Exactly.
exactly. So, like, you're going to want to get that off. Or, eye color. I have a fetish about people with green eyes. So, therefore, I only want somebody with green eyes, and therefore nobody else will be manageable. So I need that girl with green eyes to make me whole again, like David Lopan in the Big Trouble in Little
Big Trouble
China.
in Little China. Yeah, that's a
So like,
throwback.
yeah, so like, there are things like that can happen, and like that, but you
Right, but
just want to put
I
yourself in a
think that
situation.
you're the green eyes thing is a bit extreme. Like if we
Yeah.
did something that's more like realistic, and I mean what you said about the 6 foot tall girl, like on the man side of that, like the ideal 6 foot or taller, that is a standard, like in online dating, that
Hmm.
it's very common for women to even discount guys wholly without even giving them a chance by saying, if you're not 6 feet, you don't need to be talking to me. And like, I don't think it's everyone. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that that's not going to be their line that they draw in the sand. But the fact is, there are people out there that may be missing out on the love of their life walking into their life because they put 6 feet and sorry, homie's 5'11".
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to go out on an online date where the person specifies that the person has to be 6 feet and just walking on stilts and be like, here, this is what 6 feet looks like compared to you. It's like, I'm not 6 feet. I'm not 6 feet tall. I know I was not being honest about that. But it's like, this is what I would look like at 6 feet tall. I'm trying to be funny. It's like, hey, it happens. And that's the thing, right? Like, the brutality of specifically online dating, like asking for what you think you should deserve, be it a guy or a girl that's 6 foot tall or above, be it a guy or a girl that should be within a certain weight range. It gets to that point, it's like, you try to do the math and try to figure out, is this person, quote, fat or overweight or whatever like that, and I don't want to date somebody who is overweight or anything like that. And like, and then there's that level of, quote, honesty, especially if you're doing the online thing. Like, does their image and photo, which is something that you see as their first thing that you see, especially in something like Tinder or even on a Facebook on a dating profile, is that image current? Is that what you're going to see when you meet someone? Because I like that image, and then you come out and you find that that image was filtered and changed, and it's like that photo was from 10 years ago and not anywhere current. So therefore, like, that photo is just not in any way honest. So does that necessarily mean that this person isn't an honest person and was trying to sort of rope in people? All of that crazy stuff falls into play, and like whatever the standards that you set to yourself, like how honest you want to be to them. It's like, and then sometimes there are people who lie on purpose on their profiles to get an honest reaction from the person that they're trying to meet. That's happened too. It doesn't happen very often, but you see men and women who are sort of well off, or even to the point where they're somewhat known, can't find a partner, go through online dating, lie completely, and see how the person who meets them reacts. You know.
Yeah, that's like every 80s movie.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
It really is. Yeah, it doesn't happen very often. That's why I said it's like it's not really a thing. But like there are stories, even actresses like Charlize Theron recently came out that she was having trouble dating people, and was and she is literally the stereotypical 6 foot blonde I was mentioning, but couldn't find a person that she wanted to date. It ended up that was fixed almost instantaneously when she said it, because then everybody who knew her literally texted her, was like, hey, I heard you were
right.
having issues dating,
Yeah.
and
Not the
like,
case in real
well,
online dating.
that's exactly right. But in this particular case, it's like honesty to yourself is more important, especially when it comes to standards. You feel like you should get something that you deserve, uh, based on what you are, but at the same time, I honestly believe it's like you could be missing out on somebody who is completely amazing because you're a little petty over certain things. And I think you have to figure out internally, and this is my final thought on this, what you think is the most important to you. Eliminating
Yeah.
everything else. What is most important to you? Those 4 or 5 things, or 3 things, could be one thing. And then sticking to your guns with that, and then being flexible on everything else.
Yeah, I look at it
Mm-hmm.
like the bell curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's standard deviations, right? I think that most people could be very happy if they went one standard deviation up or down, where someone is, a little bit low or a little bit higher than what they set as their standard. I think they'll be able to manage it as long as overall most of their needs are met, right? I mean, there is a problem with going too low. If you set your standards too low, you attract the wrong kind of people, you get the wrong kind of attention,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll end up getting abused or hurt. That does happen. So it's not just an issue of setting, someone's standards too high. You have to have appropriate standards and reasonable standards, and also know what you bring to the table, because your standards, in part, have to be dictated by what you offer. Right? You cannot have incredibly high standards if you yourself are kind of a dumpster fire. You know, so,
That is true.
I'm just
Well,
making light of the whole thing, but
this is where your friends come in to help, right? Like, if you are having issues trying to set standards for yourself, or you're having dating issues, ask your friends what you think. Maybe ask your friends for, hey, do you know what do you know a girl I think I would really like? Your friends know you sometimes a little better than you do, in the sense that they are going to be honest with you and who you are. You might have an idea who you think you are, but your friends know who you actually are. And sometimes that perspective can be very enlightening, because you could be deluding yourself in certain ways, because that true honesty then comes out and says, like, this is who I am. I always thought I was a caring person. It's like, no, you're a cynical dick. So you need somebody who needs to
get
be,
out.
yeah. So you need to see someone who's as equally as cynical, or something like that, that you maybe could have a conversation with. Stuff like that. I mean, like, that really helps. There's all sorts of ways of trying to figure out, like, how to sort of figure out your value and what you should be going for. And if you are dating too low, as Tim has said, your friends will actually say, it's like, what are you doing with this type of person? What are you doing with him or her? It's like, you're better than this. And it's like, oh, okay, great.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
listen to these
Mm-hmm.
people. Most of these people, most of the people that care about you want the best for you. Most of them are not trying to screw up your relationship prospects so that they feel better about themselves. And if they are, get rid of that person. You don't need that in your life. Surround yourself with beautiful people, and all you'll see is beauty.
Yeah.
uh, I'd say balance is key. You know, I-
Hmm.
I- if you if you have balance, you'll attract balance, and then it just makes it a lot easier. And also, along the way, you're going to be learning about what your standards should be. They will adjust with your experience. You find that you're failing because you keep trying to get the hottest thing on the block, and it keeps failing. Well, maybe that should not be such a high standard for you because that beauty alone is not going to carry the relationship, right?
Yep.
So, you know, aim true rather than aim high.
Yeah, so that's right. So hopefully, we've exhausted all of the issues associated to that. So that one's a bit of a rabbit hole. You could sort of go deeper into all of that and trying to figure it out. One of these days, we'll probably break it down where we might do an exercise where I might set up an online dating platform, and we have Tim, or our Reddit commentators or Twitch commentators, excuse me, comment as to what I should be looking for in a partner. That way, we have
That would be amazing.
that would be a practical exercise that we could do, that we could actually show and maybe help somebody out who are maybe having those issues. But it's time for our fourth topic here, and it is in regards to being vulnerable early on in a relationship. And it is something that I personally have experienced, because when you can be bad about it, about a girl, you sort of has a tendency sometimes to lose yourself in that particular relationship. And then when it goes bad, uh, you're just like, what the hell happened? And I don't know exactly what's going on. So uh, let us go to the topic here, and it is from Malik the Scot. I don't know how many Scots I know who are named Malik, but could be a new name that the Scottish have decided to take on. So let us read the topic here from Malik the Scot. Hi guys, I'm a 25-year-old male. Am sick of getting attached to women early on and then being sad and unable to think about anything else for a while when they decide to break things. I feel so pathetic during these moments, and I can't help but think, man, I wish I didn't get attached so quick. But how do you not get attached? When I'm with a woman, I like a bit. I am vulnerable. I can talk about my issues and whenever I'm going through life, spirituality, etc. And she does the same. But this makes me get eventually attached while they don't seem to care, i.e., they care about how I'm feeling, of course, but they don't seem to feel sad about it themselves. Is there an issue with the way I'm doing things? Should I stop talking about deep subjects? Should I date several women at once? Thanks for the help. I think in this particular case, Malik is not having any issues meeting women, but basically trying to sort of establish boundaries with women. Um, Vulnerability is just something that I think in this particular case is Malik really has the ability to sort of be like, man, we really connect at this level. I really, really like this person, and then gets this sort of like gets to sort of talking deep about spirituality, about religion. But it might be one of those things in which like the topics that you're thinking that you are sort of talking about that are important to you, might not be as important to whoever you're trying to date. And I think a lot of the times, when I get into a relationship with a person and I'm really into that particular person, there are certain characteristics that make me think, oh man, I really, really like this person. But you also have to sort of temper those things with, does your does your person that you're dating feel the same way about those things? Because it seems like the example that you went through, spirituality, going what you're going through life, are very important things to you. And if it is one of those things that is not important to the other person, you have to maybe communicate with the fact that like, I really feel like that you and I connect on a level that's really, really great. I really consider these things important when I'm talking to you. Do you feel the same way? Because if you do, I think that will make me be very even more attracted to you in a way. But if it's not something that you consider important, then let me know what you think is important, or do you not want to talk about those things yet? Because both of you need to be able to sort of set boundaries with each other, especially early on in a relationship, to say, this is what I feel should be important. This is what we should be talking about, what we should be knowing. We should be more about getting to know each other and knowing how we feel about what we think about you and other topics, I think, in general, before I can actually make a sort of judgment as to how I should really feel. And I think Malik is just is putting the cart a little bit too much in front of the horse when talking about some of these subjects. Should you not talk about subjects that are important to you? No. But I think you should really temper those conversations with maybe the opinion of your partner with regards to those topics, because it will give you a sense of baseline as to where you are. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I
Mm-hmm.
think I think it's pretty common actually for people to get attached very quickly, especially with the ways that they're communicating these days. There was a psychological study I read about where people who texted back and forth a lot
Mm-hmm.
before actually meeting for the first time had a heightened sense of intimacy. And because when you're in an anonymous situation like sending text back and forth, you feel more open to being as real as you want to and putting it out there. And you have to kind of fill in the blanks with the other person because you don't have the tone of their voice, the eye contact, the body language. So you end up kind of elaborating on who they are and getting like a sense of deeper connection with them. So people would actually more likely to sleep together more quickly if they spent more time texting before they actually met, because there was a sense that they had already known each other longer. They'd already been more intimate and already on like a mental, emotional level. So that kind of thing is probably going on. Uh, and for this person specifically, uh, he said he felt pathetic for being sad and upset
Mm-hmm.
after a breakup, and like I think that's actually kind of a normal thing to go through when you have a
Yeah.
breakup. I don't
Okay.
have a sense of how when he says early on in a relationship, I don't know if we're talking about, 2 dates in, 3 dates in, or if this person's talking about, a month or 2. Uh, he didn't give a sense of that. So,
Yeah.
um, but, as long as it's within reason, if this person went out with you once and, you put it all out on the table and invested yourself emotionally in the first date, and then they were like, I'm not feeling this, I don't think you need to go start like checking your whole self against that and saying, "Oh, I'm worthless. I'm no good. I feel bad." Uh, sometimes it's just not a connection. But like, when you do open up to someone and get attached, you kind of have to make yourself vulnerable, and there are effects that come along with that. That by kind of burying yourself to another person, you are giving them the power to damage you, or you know, to have some kind of power over you or control you in a way. Um, and it's the same as a two-way street, and part of that expectation is that to really get to know someone you have to show yourself, and this person seems to be more than willing to do that, to go through that process.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and maybe they're more of a trusting person, or maybe they're so interested in finding that connection out there that they want to get real quickly, not keep it superficial and see if this person's fun and cute and whatever, but like, hey, here I am, and who are you, and what are we going to be? And that can be intimidating to some people, and especially with online dating. I mean, if you think about this, how many people send out these little fish kind of fish text messages trying to get something back, and how
Mm-hmm.
many times they go through all like, the introductions and whatever, and that part gets tiresome. But like, how tiresome is it going to be if you are opening yourself up and making yourself vulnerable and investing yourself emotionally in another person, and then getting sort of ghosted or dropped off, like, and not getting that back? So this guy that's questioning whether or not he should be vulnerable early in a relationship may have had some bad experiences where he didn't get uh he didn't get the right attention back, or he didn't get what he wanted from the other person,
Yeah.
basically,
Mm-hmm.
where he said, here I am, this is me, this is what I care about, this is what's important to me, and the other person was like, yeah, I'm gonna keep on swiping. So that's cool.
Well, the thing about it is, right, like, what's important to people are different. And that's, I think, something that he was missing, was that I think he needed to sort of let the other person know, because he never really said in any of his texts, well, in his comment, that they would talk about spirituality, they would talk about this, and it would be very important to him. But maybe, like, if you were to express the same, you were to express that importance to the other person, and the other person doesn't say anything, then that feeling of vulnerability then ends up gone, because it turns you off. Because then you would know that it's like, oh, like, this, what's happening on in my life right now, and I like to talk about what is going on in my life, and how it impacts me, and it's important to me that I discuss this with somebody. The other person would be like, I don't really give a shit. It's like, I don't really want to talk about that. Yeah. And that would immediately turn you off, and therefore you don't have to worry about being vulnerable, because it's not going to be somebody that you want to date. So it's
Yeah,
like,
but that kind of behavior would always shut you down. At some point, you'd stop making yourself vulnerable, and I think maybe that's what this guy's dealing with.
yeah, yeah. So it's like, and that might be the case, feeling, like, just sort of like running into that too many times and trying to figure that out. I mean, there are ways, I think, to find a distraction with somebody. Like, if you do end up finding a relationship, I think you sort of try to sort of get attached to somebody real quick, or maybe you don't slow down. I think he said he date several women at once in order to not be attached. It's ridiculous. Like, why would
What?
you? Yeah, why would you want to do that? I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep your mind busy, so that you want to think of and maybe keep something else in your head, in order for you to keep from focusing on your significant other. And that's fine. Find yourself some activities. Find yourself, uh, like, after work, after hours activities, sports leagues, things that you enjoy, a hobby or something like that. Something that you can throw yourself into, to possibly not sort of think about the other person all the time. I get that. That's fine. But should you be a little bit more clear, possibly, in your conversations with your another person? Yes. Should you stop having deep, meaningful relationships, or you think should be deep, meaningful relationships? No. Um, the thing,
Right.
I mean, it's just one of those things. I think it's going to end up being sort of trial and error, I think, for him to figure it out. And I think what he's deep down, I think he's afraid that he keeps doing it and he's not going to find somebody of worth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm.
And actually, I would say the real journey for this guy is going to be finding who is worth investing yourself in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now, if he's going into every date and being like, "Hi, my name is, John, and I'd like to talk to you about how my parents' divorce of my childhood really affected me." And they're like, "Whoa, whoa, hold up, hey, vulnerable guy,
Yeah, yeah.
hey, oversharing guy, let's take it back a step." Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know this person, so I don't know when he's saying like he's making himself vulnerable exactly how far he's going and how quickly. So in psychology, there's a phenomenon. I guess it's like a social exchange. It's called disclosure reciprocity, right? And basically, what's happening is uh, there are unwritten rules in exchanging, in communicating between two people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you speak to someone, uh, you know how much information you're willing to share of yourself is actually supposed to be equal and appropriate, right? So, like through the course of conversation, as you meet someone and get to know someone, you will become more comfortable, become, more like you'll let your guard down, you'll open up to them, and over time, you might start sharing something that in this case, makes you feel vulnerable and or makes you feel closer to that person, right? But it's supposed to be equal. It's natural when it's equal. I tell you something about my brother, you tell me something about, a relationship that you value, right? But where issues come along is that some people don't follow these rules very well, and it's a social awkwardness, and it pops up and you feel it, right? You get on the bus and you sit down, and the person across from you says, "Hey," and you say, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh yeah, man, crazy weather today, right? All that rain." And they're like, "Yeah, man, I just got divorced." And you're just like, "Whoa, whoa, where are you coming from, man?" They're like, and but the thing is, that stuff happens out there, and
Mhm.
in the world of online dating, when you're trying to get your first sense of the other person who's sitting across the table from you, this can really throw you off. Right? If the person comes in too strong, or they aren't following the rules of, hey, let's get there together, and they're just jumping right in and kind of thrusting you there, suddenly you feel pressure on you that you need to meet them there, like, oh god. Or the other pressures that you just want to get out of there and run home. And maybe that's what he's getting. Maybe these people are like, hey, this dude's getting too deep too quickly. This person, you know I'm just trying to see, like, are we going to sleep together? And this person's like, hey man, I got to tell you about my deepest darkest secrets and my fears. So I think, to avoid this kind of thing, and like, to have success going forward, you need to have a fair balance of, like, keeping yourself guarded and making yourself vulnerable. And like, there's this sort of fine line. You have to walk this line, opening yourself up, and then uh, keeping yourself protected enough so you don't get beat down and eventually
Mhm.
jaded. So you negotiate this stuff every day. This is not like something you need to train up. Like, this stuff happens already. You just need to apply it appropriately to your dating life, and uh, and to know that, like, there is a problem with rushing and having too high expectations. Right? If you think that you're going to go into your first second date, and that this person is going to be so meaningful to you in your future, that you can just dump it all out on them now, it's really going to be, it's going to get in the way. And the alternative is say, okay, well, I'm not going to be vulnerable anymore. I'm not going to share anything. I'm just going to keep it all superficial. Well, then you're not going to have a meaningful relationship,
Mhm.
because you're never going to get to that real person. They're not going to open up with you, or they're not going to really know who you are. So then what's the value in that?
Yeah. Yeah, and you were dead on that whole disclosure reciprocity. It's sometimes people just don't know when to talk about things. And it could be that this particular person, very attractive, goes out with a lot of women, overshares. If it's one of those things where oversharing is the problem, then maybe you have to figure out how to talk to people better. Maybe that is the reason that you feel like you're becoming you're being attached to these women, where people are trying to be nice. When you're in an intimate situation with another person, and a person opens up and tells you their problem, a lot of people are not going to be like, "Well, that sucks for you," and I don't give a shit about that. But let's talk about something else.
Right.
They're not going to do that. They're going to be very kind and courteous to your situation, and it is one of those things. Whereas I think you just sort of have to figure out what level you are, and that is going to take experience, and is going to figure out is like if the person that you're dating opens up about some things that are going on with her mother or father, say like oh, my mother's been calling me, she's been really wanting to get together and have lunch, I really don't want to talk to her because it just devolves into an argument, then it is proper to share in a situation. It's like, oh, I have that same issue with my mother, and my mother calls all the time and is always checking up on me, I find it a little annoying. And maybe you find some common ground and you do some that way, and you sort of understand where the conversation is going, especially with a significant other. You can allow them to sort of lead conversations sometimes, to allow yourself where you can go and what to do with things. So therefore, you know exactly how to talk to somebody. And if it still is the thing where, like, man, we really have a lot of stuff in common, and um, we're really connecting, and I feel like I'm really, really starting to really like this girl, then possibly then you have to be honest with yourself and maybe have a chat with her. Is like, oh, I thought we really connected on a really, really good level. I'm really, really starting to like you. Um, is this going? Am I being too forward with all of this stuff and sort of understanding where it is? And that might itself also nip it in the bud and be Barry's like, we really connected with the whole parent thing, but I'm just not feeling it. We had a great conversation here and there, blah blah blah, and that way, figure out something like maybe ahead of time to sort of maybe like get you prepared into going into the relationship or not going into a relationship based on what you're hearing after that. So, you know, you sort of have to walk that line. Tim, is that what you said? Like, you sort of have to figure out, like, where it is I can sort of navigate to without emotionally getting torn up by it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people, and again, most people do this naturally, and it is something that you learn through trial and error,
Mm-hmm.
and, people who are very successful at it, uh, these are the people that just don't make that other person feel uncomfortable, because they're right there with them, right? And oftentimes one person will be the one that's sort of leading, right? The person who's more not necessarily more talkative, because there's people that they talk a whole lot about nothing. They're very, very superficial, and you can leave saying, "Okay, well, this person and I just spent 2 hours talking, and I still don't know anything about them."
Mm-hmm.
So it's about uh, taking incremental steps towards intimacy and saying, what is appropriate for the first date? What is appropriate for the fifth date? Right? And the part that blows my mind, and this is just because I'm old school, is there are people out there that are you know rushing right into a sexual relationship and getting super super freaky, talking about their sexual kinks and all stuff like that, but they won't open themselves up on like any other level. So like uh it's a way to be protected and still get the enjoyment of like part of the relationship out of it. But uh again, could you call that super meaningful? I don't think I would. But again, each to each in their own. If everyone's out there wanting to do that, then great, have that. But if you're looking for a connection, and if you're looking for someone to really know you and to share that with them and know them, then it requires you to be vulnerable. And this guy said, "Oh, well, should I date multiple people?" Well, I I think dating multiple people would be uh, basically a way of making yourself not vulnerable by saying, "I'm not going to invest in any one person. I am not going to uh, let any one person really get to know me very well,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to keep things casual." And again, if that's your thing, go for it. But if you what you really want, and I think if you're posting on Reddit saying, can I do all this? I think what he really wants is that meaningful connection. In which case, perhaps what he needs to do is let the person across the table lead,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let them decide how vulnerable they want to get and follow with that. That will keep him from over investing early and you know in his own head thinking, oh, this is going great because I'm saying all this stuff and I'm giving up my secrets. Instead, let them come to you, and then you can meet them halfway.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, and I'm completely in agreement with you. It's just one of those things. It's possible that this poster has never done that before. It's not really a solution that has come into his or her head, and it could be something that they could try new. But the thing about it is like in order to have a meaningful relationship with a person, you need to be vulnerable yourself. So if you give up your vulnerability and basically just say, I am going to be superficial for the entire time, okay, great. You're just never going to get that meaningful relationship you're ever going to get because people who are superficial will get superficial responses in return, and it is not in any way. It seems like what uh, this poster is actually looking for, Malik the Scott. So hopefully, Malik, in this particular way, you will slow down, let the other person go forward, and sort of how let them give you the clues as to how you want to engage the significant other, and people surprise you. You will be You will be honestly surprised as to what people will want, especially after 3 dates, 5 dates, 10 dates. Sometimes it takes people a little longer to get to where you theoretically want to be, but maybe after that specific time, you will get that connection that you would want. So hopefully, in the end, something is learned there by Malik. But I think we are out of time here, Timmy.
Yep. Yeah, we got there. We went a little long-winded on a few of these topics, but
Hmm.
I think it was useful.
Yep.
Um, we actually usually throw a little bonus thing on the end there for fun, but I don't think we have time for that tonight. I think we're going to be going back to our normal Wednesday night timing, and we hope we are see you guys all again there at that time. Um, Again, if anyone wants to send us questions that you might be a little too shy to ask in the stream chat here, you can contact us at twitchlinelove@gmail.com or tweet us at twitchline.
Hmm.
Um, Feel free to pop in, drop messages. We're always open and available and interested in helping people out. So, uh, yeah, so Z, you got anything else you want to share before we go?
Nope, that's about it. Just remember also, if you want to watch older videos, Twitch only gives us a certain amount of time here to store our videos, so you can also join and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where shows in their entirety will be posted. So therefore, you can rewatch any of the shows if you have any links that you want to give out to some friends who are suffering similar issues, so that maybe they will be able to sort of get a little bit of advice that we can provide if they're suffering from some of the similar things that you have heard on today's show. But that is going to be it for both of us tonight. So hopefully we were very, very helpful to everyone out there in the Twitch world. Um, that's going to do it for us. For Tim, I am Z. Hodahori. Thank you so much. Join us again on Wednesday night, 10:30 p.m. We will have a whole range of other topics and hopefully some more submissions from you in Twitch World. If not, we will be going over through some of the Reddit discussions that we have been going through, like we have been in previous shows. Also, we are going to be expanding a lot of our content. We do will be doing maybe a sort of a shortened version of the show. We're thinking about doing it here at this time on Sunday nights, where we go through and discuss uh, not just specific problems from people, but general topics where we will go and sort of break down a relationship topic and sort of break down the do's, the don'ts, the what's, the whys, the wheres of how to deal with a certain issue or dealing with certain topics that would come up in a relationship that could
Right.
be in
And so
general topic.
and some of it will just be educational. I
Hmm.
mean, some of it's just about, sharing kind of what we've learned or even relating to articles that come out. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there that we'd like to share with you guys. So
Yep.
we'll do that. And interaction is more than welcome in those. Uh, we'll be pulling from the stream chat as well to let that kind of guide and dictate the where that goes.
Yeah, and it might not be as long as our normal shows. Our normal shows here run for about an hour and a half. Those shows could be as short as 30 minutes, could be as long as an hour. So hopefully you'll find some more of our content much more enjoyable. But that's going to be it for us. For Tim, I'm Z. Have a good evening.
Yep. Have a good night. Mwah.